Good morning, everyone. I know we're still allowing a few more people to join, and we will go ahead and get started momentarily.
Look like we're good to go, Teresa.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. It looks like Emily. Okay, Emily's in. Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is Emma Shea Perfecto. I'm the Director of Homeownership, and I'd like to welcome you this morning and thank you for your time to come and listen to us and talk about development. I am going to keep it short and sweet because I want to allow as much time for questions and comments. So I'm going to turn it over to Kim Freeman for some housekeeping and we'll move forward. Thank you very much.
Morning, everyone. Kim Freeman, Assistant Director, Homeownership Programs. Again, welcome. Thanks for joining us. We aren't going to do formal introductions of everyone that is attending, but we are asking you to put your name, your organization, and location in the chat. So we do have record of that. We would really appreciate it. Throughout the presentation today, we're going to post some polls, and we want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to provide comments and feedback for those. And we have lots of people kind of monitoring everything in the background. So thank you to the OHCS team. As everyone is aware, the meeting is currently being recorded, and we will post the recording on our website after this meeting. And it will be listed on the website where the join us on our e-news page are posted, and on the homeownership page as well. So they'll be posted, so you will see that. We will also be compiling all the questions received today, either brought up during discussion and or in the chat, and we will be answering those and posting those from this meeting. Again, we have another meeting scheduled on June 14th, which will be the same as this meeting, so you may attend one or both of those meetings. And when it is time, when we open it to the floor, if you could just state your name prior to either asking a question or providing a comment, that way we have it on the recording whom is speaking. We would greatly appreciate that. And Teresa, you want to go ahead and post the poll question, or is that coming later?
So unfortunately, there's been a little error and my polls got deactivated. So I was just checking with the team to see if anyone else is able to do it. But if not, I'll jump out of the meeting and try coming back in. So apologies for that. You may have to come back to that one.
Okay, awesome. We can do that. So just a quick hello from the OHCS staff that's on the call. You heard from Director Perfecto. I introduced myself. We have Alexander Ring, our legislative and communications coordinator, specifically assigned to the homeownership team. Yay. Magda Barrano, I always say her last name wrong, and she's our partner and community access coordinator. Sarah Siddiqui, who is brand new to our team as of late last week, and she's our racial disparities program analyst. Talia Cran-Kravis, who you all have met, is our operations and policy analyst for the homeownership division, about 1 month on the job, I think. And so we're grateful to have her. And our newest addition to homeownership as well is Teresa Rainey, who is our senior homeownership development program analyst. And she will be the one working with partners and helping create this wonderful new homeownership development program that we come up with. Here's our brief agenda that we're going to talk about. So we're just going to provide a brief background, a summary of the partner feedback that we've heard so far, and that's through our agency requested budget meeting that we had, and also the information that was shared at the Housing Alliance meeting that we heard. We want to provide the opportunity to hear more from you as well throughout the day. And just some quick objectives are: we want to solicit ideas for building an inclusive homeownership development program that prioritizes culturally responsive housing and racial equity, better understand how we can support partners in homeownership development ideas and needs, and then utilize the feedback that we receive to create our new homeownership development program. And we need your input, obviously, because we want to make sure that we're creating programs that work with our partners and in the communities that you're currently serving. And at this time, I'm going to pass it off to Talia.
Great, thanks, Kim. So we first wanted to start with a little bit of historical context around homeownership development funding. So here's a high-level overview of LIFT funding. As most of you know, LIFT became a source of funding for homeownership development in 2017 when HB 3175 expanded the use of Article 11Q bonds to include affordable housing that may be purchased by a household with an income at or below 80% AMI. So since then, homeownership has received 20% of available LIFT funds, which we've distributed to partner organizations through 4 NOFAs and a 5th application cycle that just ended. And over 20 million has gone to 22 projects around Oregon, supporting the construction of 269 units. So you can see here that the amount of LIFT funds available each biennium on this table, and I'll note a few things. So in our 2022 application cycle, homeownership received 13 applications from 10 unique organizations totaling just over 19 million. And 7 million of those are wildfire requests, which is a special funding allocation. And since these applications are still under review, the table doesn't reflect the latest NOFA cycle. And then 50% of LIFT funding is set aside for rural areas, but homeownership hasn't received a rural request in 2022. And in the last 2 funding years, only 2 rural applications were funded. As you can see, LIFT funds have been undersubscribed each year. While not all applications received have been funded due to various eligibility issues, even the amount of funds applied for has never come near exceeding the amount of funds available. Oop, and I see a poll just popped up. So while I'm talking, you can also take this poll and tell us about your experience with LIFT funds. And so any LIFT homeownership funds that aren't allocated through the NOFA are then transferred over to the rental NOFA. And due to Article 11Q requirements, the funds must be allocated each year and are not eligible to be rolled over to the next homeownership NOFA cycle. So while these funds are still going to address a deficit in affordable housing, there have been funds left on the table for affordable homeownership development. So that's just a little more about LIFT funding. And let's see, it seems like most of the folks on the call have received LIFT funding, so are obviously very familiar. And some have not used LIFT, got a few that have applied. So thanks for answering. That helps us understand your experience with the program. I'm going to end the poll. Oh, and share the results. Sorry, didn't realize that you guys weren't seeing that. And I'm going to keep moving our presentation along. So this just shows a little bit more about additional funding that the homeownership division has received for homeownership development. So with the support of stakeholders, we've successfully secured funding for homeownership development over the past 3 years. In 2021, we received 20 million in general funds for flexible funding to allow for the development of alternative homeownership models such as co-ops, as well as affordable single-family homes. In the recent short session, we again received 20 million in general funds for development of affordable homes for purchase. The intention of these funds were to add and layer this funding with LIFT homeownership with the goal of increasing LIFT's ability to serve rural areas and allow for greater density in urban areas. And in the latest agency request budget, we've asked for 25 million in general funds for flexible use homeownership development resources. None of this funding has been awarded yet, so feedback on a structure for deploying these funds is key to what we want to hear from you today. So I'll pass it back to Kim.
Great, thanks, Talia. So this slide just represents some of the feedback that we've heard so far. Please note it's not a comprehensive list of everything that we heard, but we tried to put some things together that we've heard from the 2 sessions I mentioned earlier today. So we know that the LIFT program is challenging, but some partners have figured out how to leverage it and wouldn't have been able to develop homes if we had not had LIFT homeownership development dollars. We also heard very clearly from everyone, right, that asking for general funds in each biennium is risky, right? Because we heard as well that we need a dedicated continued funding source. We also heard forgivable loans are critical. Revolving loan funds, which we talked about in a couple of our other presentations, would not be sustainable for developers. And we want to talk a little bit more about that later. Construction costs are at an all-time high right now, and nonprofit developers need an increase in funding. And we can see that with the current housing price market right now. We need to pair a development program with a mortgage lending product here at OHCS would be helpful. We also heard that homeownership development financing is similar to affordable rental housing, and we need to be able to leverage funds. But some of our homeownership partners feel that homeownership development is treated a little bit differently than in the affordable rental housing group. And our partners, we heard this loud and clear from all of you, that you are aligned to your commitment to reducing the racial homeownership gap. Again, those are overall highlights, and we will continue to listen and hear some more feedback from you today and in continuous sessions. Thanks, Talia. So here's some challenges that we know that LIFT has created, surfaced. You can spin it however you like, but LIFT, as we know, requires a first lien on the property. And with the state having to have an ownership in the land, works only with a community land trust, which excludes some of our culturally specific organizations, including tribal communities and other developers. And that's a requirement from the Article 11Q bond. The LIFT is statutory required lien, and its affordability restrictions, again, posing some other restrictions and challenges in trying to find mortgage lending products that work with LIFT outside of the Oregon Bond residential loan program. We lend the appraised value. Well, the LIFT ones were intended to use in rural communities, which we know and we've heard that it's more challenging in rural communities because of the land value. With the home buyers that we've helped with, the homes that have been developed through LIFT homeownership development, the home buyers of those homes have all been financed mostly through the Oregon Bond residential loan program. I know there's a few of the LIFT developments that have used a lender, and it's been a portfolio loan with that lender due to some of the other restrictions on those properties. But we also want to make sure that we are understanding that we can't totally rely on the Oregon Bond program. As we know, our private activity bond limitations will be stretched, and there'll be more dedication to affordable rental housing. And so I've been spending a lot of time working with some of our partners with our current home buyers, ensuring that we can actually finance some of these properties on the Oregon Bond residential loan side. And I've been working very closely with the title officer and the policy staff at Deschutes County Title. They have been amazing, and they have never seen anything like these lift loans and the deed restrictions, and making sure the title reports are accurate both for the lender policy and the homeowner policy. And those are just some of the challenges that have come up once these homes have been developed, and we're trying to make sure that they are ready for home buyers today and home buyers in the future. And I'm going to turn it over to Teresa.
Thank you very much. And many thanks again to everyone who's taken the time to join us today. So we've reached the most important part of today's agenda, which is when our team listens to your input and ideas. We know you may have some questions for us, and we may not be able to answer them all today as we're still in the listening stage, but we will take all your questions back and try and get more information to you as soon as we can. We do have some introductory questions on the slides here that we're hoping many of you can speak to. And please feel free to start putting your thoughts in the chat, or go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to speak. And while folks are thinking, I'd also say, given the size of the group today, I think we'll be able to call in everyone who would like to speak. I certainly hope so. But our contact information for additional follow-up will be shared at the end. And we have another listening session scheduled in June, so there will be more opportunities to share your input. And again, this is being recorded, including the chat, so all of your input today will be saved. And I'm just, again, looking for any hands if folks have any input. I see we do have a question that came in the chat. This was a question about the money left on the table. Is it almost 100% from the rural undersubscription? I don't believe I know the answer to that. I don't know if Ty or Kim might have more information, or if that's something we need to follow up on. But I do see that's our first question. So if anyone can speak to that, please feel free.
I would say let's get back to Julene and the group on that.
Thank you so much. And I see we have a hand from Proudground. Please go ahead.
Good morning, team. Thanks so much for having this giving us this opportunity to communicate about our reaction to the proposal for this year. The history is helpful. I'll lower my hand because it's obnoxious to have it there. I'll to help launch the conversation, because I think I've been really pretty clear all along, and our comments aren't necessarily reflected in this today. I'm really glad to see Emma Shea with us this morning, because I'm really anxious to have us be able to have a dialogue with each other, so we can really, work out the issues. Clearly, the fund has been underutilized. You've illustrated that quite clearly this morning, and the question is why? And of course, you are very well aware of some of the issues and concerns we've had along the way. And really, I don't know that Shan's with us this morning, but the team from Habitat has been very proactive at really offering solutions. And we've worked pretty hard through the Alliance work group to communicate around the kinds of things that we think could really help move the money and get it out into the community and have it functional. And clearly it took some time, as these things do, both on the agency end and on the nonprofit end, to adapt all of our programs and build capacity to make this kind of resource work. I think we've been crystal clear about the revolving loan fund issues as it relates to homeownership. We are frankly a little shocked at the alternative to eliminating LIFT for homeownership. The revolving loan fund just simply is not an effective home ownership tool, when what we're desperately trying to do is fill the gap between what it costs to build or purchase, help facilitate our clients to build or purchase a home. The gap is a subsidy gap, and it's got to be filled by federal, state, local, private resources. And we fundraise like crazy people every day to help fill that gap for families and to help make it work for them. And we think a loan product that has to be paid back. We debated this early on with the LIFT program when it was first launched, that if the resources stayed in the home and became a part of a permanently affordable portfolio of homes in the statewide, we would have the benefit, and that would satisfy the loan And that way we would have homes that would continue to be sold to families into the future, sustaining that first investment and keeping it in that home in perpetuity. And clearly there's been challenges, and we've been trying to problem solve around them. And we would really like to do that with the team at OHCS and make this program work better. The alternative simply, flatly does not work for the clients we're working with. 75% of our wait list are from communities of color, Black, Indigenous, people of color. We have a commitment to serve over 75% in our program, and last year we achieved 83%. And in partnership with Habitat for Humanity in the Portland region. And we're just, the way this reads to us is without the LIFT opportunity. And when you see which projects get funded this year, you're going to see a much more robust effort. We applied for, funds for 83 new homes in Medford. It is a wildfire designated fund. And I think that's going to, I hope be a showcase for 3D printed homes. And there's so much innovation, so much going on. The last thing we need is to change course and shift to a product that we simply can't use for home ownership. So my message today is let's hold on to LIFT for home ownership, make it work better. If there's unutilized funds, make sure that the rental team has access to those. It was a soft set aside from the very beginning, but work with us to problem solve through the issues that have gotten in the way of making this extraordinarily important funding source work for homeownership and for permanently affordable homeownership. And I recognize that there's issues around that. We stand in clear solidarity around the fact that we are completely dedicated to building generational wealth and creating stability for families. And we have a rich history of achieving that. And we have good working partnerships with the culturally specific agencies. We know there's some disagreement, and there are other funding sources that can be used, I think, for that purpose, for other kinds of models. But this is an important source. And our message today is let's hold on to LIFT for homeownership. It's crucial in our effort to build more homes and serve more families in the state at this crucial point in time.
Teresa, this is Kim Freeman. Can I want to just interject something. I know Emily and Melissa have their hands up, but I'm not sure if everyone saw our responses to the questions that came in from our agency requested budget, where we had reflected that this $25 million ask would be a revolving loan fund. And so we went back and combed through all of the information. And we also had said that the first $20 million in 2021 also was a revolving loan fund. So I do just want to share with everyone that the $20 million from 2021 was not budgetarily approved as a revolving loan fund. So it's $20 million of just dollars, right? So there's no revolving loan fund attached to that 20 million. And then this 25 million, we're playing off, which is really not the right word I should use, but playing off the 20 million that was a revolving loan fund, continuing that revolving loan fund. So I want to put everyone at ease that we do not have the revolving loan fund now tied to any of these dollars, right? So maybe there is something that comes of that in a program, but I also want just to ensure to everyone that at this point, none of these dollars are tied to a revolving loan fund. And I just hope that helps some of the conversation today, but I don't want to stop the conversation, but I wanted to be sure everyone was aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your input as well. So I see we have more hands. I'll call on Emily in just a second, but I'm also hoping we can hear from you all on some of the questions we have in the chat, and that may be what you'll be addressing in your spoken comments. But we would especially love to hear, what are you hearing from the communities you serve? It sounds like many of you have deep connections to the communities that you're serving. And what are they telling you in terms of their homeownership needs? Please feel free to add that in the chat as we go along. And Emily, please go ahead.
Thank you. And this is a lot of questions to try to cram in, and I know we have a lot of people, so I'll try to be fast, but happy to answer any questions also. I first just want to acknowledge the my appreciation for the recap of the messages you've heard thus far. I think they really did reflect the feedback that I and some of my peers have tried to give. So I just appreciate that acknowledgement and reflection as a start to the meeting. In terms of the questions here, what we're hearing from community, we educate hundreds of prospective first-time homebuyers every year across 7 counties. And what we're hearing is that there's a wide variety of need, to nobody's surprise, right? That we have a lot of communities that are interested in manufactured and modular development and would like to see more of that. We have a lot of communities who are really interested in the CLT model and embracing it because they come from cultural traditions that want to balance community ownership with individual ownership. And so that's a really exciting model to a lot of the communities we work with. We have other communities that are more interested in a fee simple type of development, and others that are interested in very experimental, like co-op housing and sort of the gray area between rental and lease models that would like to get really creative if we had the funding sources to do that. And so I think, when we talk to our buyers, what we're hearing is there is a need for a lot of different types of development. And right now we sort of have some pieces of the pie, but not the whole pie. And I would say that the other 2 messages that I think are key is that affordability is the single #1 priority. So a lot of our families and a lot of the communities we talk to are willing to sacrifice their ideal unit type if what they can get is affordable, right? So maybe they want a traditional stick-built house, but they're perfectly happy to accept a manufactured home if that's what gets them into ownership, because that's what meets their affordability needs. So that affordability one is the very top. And the other is that we are just hearing from every community that they need more opportunity for affordable ownership, rural, suburban, urban, every BIPOC community that we work with, every social identity that we work with, overwhelmingly need more opportunity. So that's what we're hearing from our homeowners. The impact of a grant versus a loan. So I pulled data with our real estate development team this morning to look at exact numbers. And first of all, I just want to reiterate, we cannot make our development work with only loan funding. We are limited to get to one of the bottom sub-bullets. Our capacity to take on debt for a project is limited to what we can sell the homes for, because when we sell the homes, that's how we pay off the loans on the project. Everything else, the difference between what it costs us to develop and what we can sell those units for, has to be grant subsidy, because we have no other way to pay it back than what we can sell the units for. And I cannot stress that enough. And right now, our newest projects this year, because of what labor and materials are doing, are averaging more than $400,000 a unit to build. And most of our counties, because we're not in a lot of high income, high AMI counties, most of our families can afford to have a maximum mortgage, especially now that rates are hitting 5%, of in that like 200 to 240,000 range. And so if units are costing us 400,000 to build, our subsidy, our grant subsidy that we cannot pay back because we have no means of doing it, is ranging from like $160,000 to $180,000. And I don't imagine that those costs are going to go down anytime soon. So that's the level of grant funding that we need to reach the affordability requirements and actually have homes that are selling that are affordable to families below 80% AMI, which I think is the goal. So that we can't do alone, except again, we can take on a loan up to the sales value of the homes, and we can do that. We get financing from private sources, from CDFIs. I also looked at the amount per unit of those financing costs. So even if OHCS came out with a loan product that was 0% interest to basically remove our financing costs from a loan on the project, our financing costs for those loans are running between $3,000 and $5,000 per unit. So even if you took the interest to 0, it would only save us $3,000 to $5,000 per unit, which is not even close to the $160,000 or $170,000 that we need to subsidize the unit to make it affordable. The math just absolutely does not work there. So, I mean, it'd be nice if you guys want to introduce a 0% construction loan, we can use that instead of the market and save that $3,000 to $5,000 per unit. Absolutely go for it, but it's not going to take the place of subsidy. In terms of like creating a reliable funding source going forward or thinking about creative uses in future, I would love to see us actually start from the end result that we want, right? We all share the commitment that Kim talked about to helping push back against racial disparities in homeownership, socioeconomic disparities in homeownership across our state. Let's think about what we need to move the needle there, right? It's not 60 homes per year. I would like us collectively as a state to be thinking about, 500 homes a biennium as a starting place, and then building from there. And what are the funding mechanisms that we need to subsidize those 500 affordable units per biennium? It's going to be many millions of dollars. It's going to be many more than $25 million. And then back into what's the money we need, what's the capacity we need as a homeownership development community. Let's build that capacity. Let's build those multiple layers of funding sources so that we're actually getting to the end goal of how do we move the needle on racial disparities in homeownership. And 25 million is not enough. So for now, what I would love to see is lift homeownership stay, at least to some extent, and be added to with things like a $25 million general fund request. Maybe we can also build that over time so that Lyft can do what it can do, which is urban and suburban, higher value, single family homes in a CLT model. We can use what I consider an augmentation fund to help top off Lyft projects in rural communities and higher density urban projects that have lower land values, right? So maybe they can appraise to 50,000 and we top them off with this augmentation fund so we can leverage the Lyft funds and still utilize them to better and greater extent. And the augmentation fund can also have a carve out for types of development that aren't a CLT model, right? If you have a model that just won't work with Lyft, let's carve off a fund for that also and have a spectrum where the pieces of the pie are best served by different funding mechanisms, but we're utilizing all of them to try to reach that end goal of let's go for 500 units a biennium, and then let's see how we can build from there. Maybe over time, we get that augmentation fund building and stable enough that it's repeat funding biennium to biennium. And we all feel like, okay, let's back away from Lyft because we've got better other funding sources that can be more flexible. Great. But let's build some stable other funding sources where we know we can rely on it, where we know we've got more than 25 million assured from biennium to biennium before we talk about letting go of the one source that we know we have that is stable and repeatable. The last thing I would say is like if we can get there, right? If we can get to 60 million a year, 80 million a year for homeowner or a biennium for homeownership development, Dev Northwest can certainly do more. We can definitely do more in rural areas. We can definitely do more creative development. We also want to see our peers doing more. We want that capacity building as a community so that there are more of us going in for this funding and more units being built. And so again, like I look at the chart at the beginning and the most obvious assessment is that we're underutilizing the Lyft homeownership money, but I also see a growth trajectory, right? Obviously last year was a bit of an anomaly because we were in the midst of COVID, but I see building capacity every year, and we haven't even done a whole lot to build capacity, especially among community-specific developers or culturally specific developers. So I think that, the 19 million this year in applications is awesome. And let's try to build that to 25 million a year next year and 40 million a year the year after that, and not start with a constrained funding source where we're all having to back up and reverse capacity because all we have is $25 million. And I will end there.
Thank you so much for all of that input. We really appreciate it. And I also want to acknowledge the comment from Pradgran in the chat. Thank you so much for putting that there for us as well. I'm going to ask Melissa to go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm with Bend Redmond Habitat for Humanity. And similar to the comments that were just made, there are 2 points that I wanted to make, maybe 2.5 comments, but we have been utilizing Lyft funding. Our first award was in 2019. And just for perspective, those homes just closed in October of last year. And so we're just figuring out how to keep the hula hoop going. And we just figured out the rhythm. And to pivot because of under subscription at this point feels tenuous because we're just figuring it out. As Emily mentioned, the momentum is building. And for perspective, Lyft funding has enabled our affiliate to go from building 5-ish homes a year to over 20 this year. So without Lyft funding, like Emily mentioned, we're looking at the real possibility of decreasing our capacity, which is not in alignment with what we're hearing in the community, with the housing need being greater than it ever has been before. I want to talk a little bit too about the undersubscribed LIFT funding. It appears to me that the rural aspect of it is undersubscribed, but I think, if I'm not misspeaking, that the urban set aside was over requested. And so I would beg to raise the question of redefining that balance or that split of funding. If the rural is continuously undersubscribed and urban is leaning towards being oversubscribed, perhaps looking at that. Finally, I want to talk about loan versus grant. In Bend, where we operate, our city funding for CDBG funding is a loan, it's not a grant. And so what happens for us and other builders in the area is, when we're faced with subsidy, now our subsidy could range from 100 to 200,000 per home. If it's a loan that we have to repay, we decline it and we don't apply for that, because it ends up being an unfair burden on us or on the family at the time of selling their home. And so really looking at, now we are not eligible, or we have taken ourselves out, if you will, for local funding because of repayment. The thought of repaying repaying LIFT is very concerning and will greatly impact what we're able to do in this area. Thank you for the time to speak.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thank you as well, Susan, for the response to question number 2 in the chat. Jackie, please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. So first, I want to appreciate these listening sessions, and I hope that these listening sessions lead to real change. I'm going to try and follow your questions in order. So first of all, what is CORE based in Bend hearing from our community? So we have completely changed our model over the past year, based directly on community engagement with BIPOC households, who are now our priority population. So what we've heard is that they are looking for family-sized, so like 2 to 3 bedroom units in single family homes. This is very similar to data that came out of Proud Ground a couple of years back. And so what we've been doing, right, is working to build up our pipeline to meet those community needs. And as Melissa eloquently said, it takes a bit as a developer, especially using a new program, to get it going and get that rhythm. So for example, CORE has been approved for 4 units. We have 7 units pending, and our next ask would be 40 units. I think if you look at other organizations, you would see that trajectory of getting comfortable with LIFT, understanding how it works, and then being able to go out in your community and acquire land. And that takes 3 to 5 years, right? These processes. And to stop a program midstream would not only damage the relationship between nonprofit developers and OHCS, but more importantly, it would damage the trust that has been built in these communities, where us as developers saying, these units are coming, this is the timeline, because we know we had a steady source of funding from the state. And especially in Central Oregon, most projects don't even happen without LIFT, because we don't have a bond, we don't have any other local sources. So from a geographical equity standpoint, losing the steady source could honestly halt areas' entire pipelines. And so when we're looking at trust built between our partnership with OHCS, trust built with our communities that we're trying to serve, changing something so quickly without a steady plan in place of what's going to be moving forward, I think is a significant risk to the production of pipeline and to serving BIPOC households, which I know is a priority at the state's level. And then I don't need to reiterate, but I will, that when we lose units on the market because they're not permanently or extended affordable, what we're doing is we're just creating this hamster wheel where we lose units and we build more affordable housing units, and that does not serve any city, county, or area. It's so critical so that as we continue to build homes, they're also reselling. I mean, Core's too young to have those resales, but Diane, interrupt me if I'm wrong, but Proud Ground is doing close to 30 resales a year. Those are units that don't cost anyone any additional funding, and that serves more households. And so to make permanent affordability more challenging by replacing it with a loan and therefore halting pipelines that not only serve households now, but for generations to come, again, from an equity point of view, is concerning to me. What we need is permanent subsidy, especially in Central Oregon. And what we're seeing is our gap is about $160,000 of permanent subsidy required per household so that we can serve households as low as 65% area median income. And so LIFT, in my opinion, unfortunately still has to be layered with a lot of different funding. And that's another potential reason why you don't see developers going out to more rural communities to build, because there's no other funding. And so you would need a much higher increase of LIFT subsidy to be able to go out and build permanent affordability units in a rural area, because that's one of the only sources you could use. And so I think we need to ask ourselves why areas like rural areas are not subscribing, and need to be a little bit more thoughtful about the reasoning, and maybe it is the way the program is currently funded, which I think is significantly too low. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Of course, thank you very much for that input, and thank you as well to Emily and Proud Ground for the additional comments in the chat. As we move forward to our next hand, I'll just ask again if anyone could chime in a little bit more, maybe on question number 3, on what are your thoughts on how we might create a reliable funding source for homeownership development as we're looking towards our next agency request budget. And I'm also curious what technical assistance needs you have, if any, that you'd like us to keep in mind as we move through this. So with that, Tamara, please go ahead.
Thank you. And, I appreciate being on this call and listening. And I know everyone's doing a lot of great work in Oregon. And what always counts is that we're doing what we can to bring more housing to those that need it. There is a significant housing shortage in this country, specifically in Oregon. And there's what is sometimes a little bit concerning to me in the last few years that OHCS's sort of policy and programming has shifted to and pivoted to is we've kind of noticed that developments, and including homeownership, is you have to check the boxes that we've changed the way that we do business. We changed the way we think about development based on the requirements of the funding. So it's concerning and interesting to see that the LIFT funds were undersubscribed. That's a sign more than anything else that it was not flexible, that there was too many barriers for people to be able to apply and utilize those funds, because there's an absolute need for millions. Is $25 million enough? No, it's not enough. If you bring a certain amount of money that gives flexibility and gives developers to be able to demonstrate the absolutely need in their communities, whether it is certain communities, rural communities, senior populations, different bandwidths of incomes, we will fulfill that need. So funds, when they don't get they utilized, is because there was requirements that we were not able to make the benchmark there. And there was not enough flexibility in the program to be able to deploy those resources, and they're there. I think that this group probably has the experience. They certainly have experience and the knowledge, and they have the boots on the ground knowledge of where their communities are. If you give a program, any kind of loan program or grant program, the flexibility and give us the latitude to put the burden on us to demonstrate the need in our communities and also give us the ability to provide some creativity and work with OSCS, we will deploy those sources very quickly, I imagine. One of the things that I'm interested in, I think I mentioned this once upon a time, and it's something I want to continue to work on, is how do we bridge what is happening in the rental multifamily OSCS department and homeownership together. And one of those ideas is looking at a rent to own option. How do we give, I mean, in the end, we're giving a lot of different, we want to be able to give a lot of different housing options, rental home ownership, and at a lot of different possible AMIs as well. So there's a lot of different things that can happen with this, with the funds that are available. We need to look to see what creative ways that we can make that happen and deploy those resources quicker, obviously. Let's see, the last thing I would say is to make a loan, or whether it's a loan, something that we would want to tap to and utilize those loan fundings from OHCS in whatever shape or form, it's got to be very competitive. Right now, with rising, with the cost of loans right now, construction and perm, it doesn't, and agency loans right now aren't even an option right now because they're not even competitive with what you can get down the street from your bank. Bridge loaning is not even a source that people are looking at because the bridge loaning market is just not available right now. So for whether it's, you know, we're talking about loans to be able to fill gaps or to be able to make our developments work, it's got to be at a competitive interest rate so that we can utilize and again deploy those resources. Those are only my comments. Thanks.
This is Emma Shea Perfecto. I just want to jump in real quick to clarify. First of all, you know, homeownership is still a relatively new division. Lift Homeownership, the program, does not live with us. The actual program doesn't live with us. So it is run by multifamily, as it has been for quite some time. And I also want to clarify that the rules around Lift, my understanding is those are not our rules. Those are rules that are required by the type of bond program that it is. So that is, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. That's part of what we're trying to resolve. We are trying to, I know 25 million is not enough. I know that the need is great. Those are very clear messages. I mean, Diana has been yelling from the rooftops, as has Emily. And, you know, Emily, I think, put it quite well. There's a need for, people have very different needs, and we need to have a flexible source that can meet those different needs, whether it is a CLT or it's a co-op or it's a fee simple home. We have families. I think that the future looks like we're going to have more extended families living together because of the need. We have to plan on that. So this isn't, so I just want to be clear from the home ownership standpoint, because I'm hearing something, we don't want to put a bunch of rules around the money. We would love to get, you know, as much money as we can. The conversations we're having in home ownership is when we build this, we need to look for number one, and I believe Emily said this as well, you know, and I want to thank you, Emily, for your comments, because they're right on. I mean, we have to make affordability our number one, no big capital letters in development. That has to happen. We have to figure out how to support that sustainability of affordable homes for the long term. And we have to look at money that doesn't have 10,000 strings attached to it, because that is what the feds require. So I just want to clarify some of those things. Kim, you can jump in if there's anything I missed. Oh, and I'm sorry, I do know what she's going to say I missed. And we have to look at how those loans for the home buyer, and I again, Emily, loved what you said in that we need to look at what are we trying to get to. And I want to make sure that the home buyer has a way to purchase the home. And that those are all things that we're talking about and concerned about. So
Sorry, real quick, I appreciate what you said, and I didn't necessarily want to say this and this. I think it's great that this program is looking at less restrictions and less barriers to do so. Globally, I'm just thinking that lift, no matter it's OHCS, when I think of OHCS, it is not, obviously, I hate to say it in point blank, it's not working so well when it comes to delivering new homes. And so I'm the obvious, right? And so that's it. Sorry.
I'll kind of chime in here. I'm Alexandra. I'm our government relations coordinator for the Homeownership division, and just provide a little bit more background on LIFT. LIFT uses Article Q11 bonds, which are a constitutionally defined bond with constitutionally defined requirements for ownership that present a lot of barriers. And unfortunately, that's kind of one of the challenges with LIFT, is there's not a great way to change how those bonds operate. Hi, Diane. And so that presents a significant challenge for us, and presents a lot of the program requirements that we have, unfortunately.
Thank you. I want to jump in real quick. I know we have another hand waiting, and I'll get to you in one moment, Chris. I want to ask if we can go to our next slide, because we do have a few polls we wanted to add to this meeting to help our team. Many of us are new, like myself, to help us get to know you all a little bit better as well, including the target populations your organization serves. So these polls are anonymous. Our first one, the target populations, is in two parts because we had quite a lot of options we wanted to add, and Zoom wouldn't take all of our answers. So you may not see everything, every population on that Zoom poll, but if Talia or Kim could start that poll so folks can answer, and then I'd like to ask Chris to go ahead and chime in as well.
Hi, Teresa, and everybody else. Thank you so much for the opportunity to submit some comments. My name is Chris Ogren. I'm located here in Bend, Oregon, and I am coming at you from an organization called Housing for All, and we convene a regional group from Crook, Jefferson, and Deschutes counties of stakeholders across the spectrum of housing, from homelessness all the way up to full market rate housing. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to provide a little bit of feedback about comments we've been hearing. So folks in Central Oregon are definitely, this is on their radar, and they have some concerns about this program, the proposed changes. I think the first and foremost thing that's come out to us has been that permanent subsidy, either grant or forgivable loans, is much more effective at incentivizing development than non-forgivable loans. So if the goal is to create affordable housing, I think that grant funding will help achieve that end substantially more effectively than loans. We've also heard that some developers in Central Oregon feel that they're struggling to compete with other urban areas more broadly. So I wonder if there's a way to target funding based on region or provide some technical assistance to the smaller urban areas. We also, I know I have to say it, but there's a lack, especially here. There's a big demand in housing, but above 80% AMI, but that is not fully market rate. And there's a big gap here. I mean, the median housing price in Bend right now for last month was like $770,000, which is out of reach for a lot of folks. And so if there's any way to adjust the AMI or somehow factor in folks that are a little bit above that, there's some discussion about that 80% number being impacted by the recent ACS and that it might get adjusted down. I don't know. There's just some concerns with that 80% AMI threshold. And I just want to, in sum, say that I think folks feel a little bit that the rug is being pulled out from underneath them, and that they had a few years to get acclimated to the program and build success. And it seems like just now, to the point where some developers are able to hit the ground running and projects are being expanded, that the rug is being pulled out underneath them and the opportunity is kind of going away. So just wanted to share those comments, and thank you so much again for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I believe the poll should allow multiple choices. So if that's not the case, please do feel free to either put your comments in the chat. You can send them to me directly or to everyone. But otherwise, ideally, you should be able to select more than one option on each of these polls because we know there can be many answers for each one. So I'll just ask Talia, just let me know where we are with the polls. I can't see them coming up on my end. So just let me know if we've gone through all of them or if we need to give a little bit more time.
Sure, we're on the second target population poll. So I'm going to end that and then share the results really quickly. And then let's move to the next one. So we want to know more about who is on the call. And so this next poll is also a two-part question because Zoom wouldn't take all of our answers. So you can select as many as apply to you, and then we'll move on to the next one. And then I believe we just have 2 more after that.
Well, thank you. And we know this may keep people a minute or two late. We really appreciate any time you can take to help us with these questions as we get to know you better. And by we, I mean those of us on the team who are new. Of course, many of us on the team know you very well already. But we do appreciate the time and also really looking forward to learning more from you, especially around how you want us to continue engaging with you. So that will be in that last poll. And I see there's a question from Sarah in the chat. I don't know if Kim or Emma Shea could speak to that or not, or if we should follow up, but I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss it.
Sarah, Elizabeth May, I am not sure if she's on or not, but she is more than welcome to attend and I can ensure that she's on for the next time. I thought I saw her on earlier, but I'm not 100% on that, but I will make sure it's on her calendar. So thank you for the ask.
All right. And Talia, if you wouldn't mind taking us to that last slide, we have some contact information for follow-up. We know we heard from many folks today, and then many folks may have just been listening in or may have wanted to add some feedback as well. So we really want to encourage you to reach out to us and provide more input one-on-one. My own contact information is there. Of course, I'll be working really closely with Kim and Emma Shea to get information back to you as quickly as possible. But you're welcome to reach out directly to share your input. And we also have a second listening session scheduled. So if you wanted to share some input or if you have additional input you want to think over and bring back to us at that session, we welcome you coming to that. I say you might want to join about 15 to 20 minutes in so you can maybe miss that the opening slides. You're always welcome to join a little bit late so that you can be there for the listening session piece of it. So we are more than happy to see you again and just want to thank you all so much for your time today. And again, I don't know if we have that last poll up, but if you have time to finish that one before you go, we greatly appreciate it. All of these polls are anonymous, but we will be compiling the results of them to help us understand how successful our sessions are being with reaching all of our communities. And thank you all again so much for your time.
Teresa, this is just Kim. I just want everyone to note that there is a different Zoom link for the meeting on June 14th. So please make sure that you have that link as well, as it will be a different link than this one. So, and again, we'll post the recording to our website and get the questions answered and shared as quickly as we can as well. I will reiterate what Teresa said. Thank you for joining. Thank you for completing the polls and great job to this team for putting all of this together for the session today. And we will look forward to seeing and hearing from you and hopefully other developers across the state at our June 14th meeting. And as always, email Teresa directly with any other further comments or anyone on this team, and we're happy to make sure that those are addressed as well.
And I want to also say thank you. And we'll take all of this back. We'll sit as a team, and then I can see from the engagement options that there are a few folks that would like to get on a one-on-one call and do some in-person follow-up. So we'll try to figure out how to do that and make sure that we get all of your ideas and sit down and really think through what we're trying to propose and do here. So our goal, again, just to reiterate, is to get some affordable homes on the ground. I love what Emily said of like, let's go for it. Let's say 500 homes. that is, you know, an amazing thought. And I want to work together to get there. I mean, there's got to be a way we can do this. So, and the need is great. I'm tired of hearing that people, I'm watching prices go up, and know that there are people that are hardworking people that would love to have a home for their families and can't afford it. So this is the stuff that keeps me up at night. I'm sure that that is not something new to any of you. I'm looking at Diane's face, so I know that this is what we're all living and breathing. So the intent here is to come up with something in home ownership. You know, again, we're like the baby part of the agency that makes sense, that's solid, and that we can move forward in the future and really make a difference. So that's the goal here. So thank you very much. Thank you all that attended. I can't see everybody, but thank you all for being here and taking the time. And I look forward to working with you guys. And you know, again, thanks to the team. We actually have I can say I have a team now, which is incredible. Then people dedicated to this work. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.
I'll go ahead and close out the meeting.